Think about the last time you felt truly angry. Maybe it was a moment of injustice, a betrayal, or even frustration with yourself for not meeting your own expectations. What did you do with that anger? Did you suppress it, let it explode, or channel it into something productive? Most people are taught that anger is a negative emotion, something to be avoided, feared, or controlled at all costs. But what if everything you thought you knew about anger was wrong? What if anger wasn't just a destructive force, but a hidden source of power, one that, when understood and harnessed, could lead to immense personal growth, resilience, and even success? History, philosophy, and psychology all suggest that anger is not inherently bad. In fact, it has been the driving force behind some of the greatest changes in human history. Today, we are going to explore how you can tap into the hidden power of anger, turning it into a tool for transformation rather than a source of destruction. And here is something most people do not realize. The way you handle anger can determine the course of your life. By the end of this discussion, you will have a completely new understanding of this emotion, one that will allow you to use it to your advantage. And the final insight, the last and most important key, will change the way you see not just anger but yourself. To begin, we must first ask, what is anger really? Is it just an impulsive reaction, a loss of control, or is there something more beneath it? The truth is, anger is not just an emotional outburst, it is a message. It signals that something in your world is out of alignment, that a boundary has been crossed, that something needs to change. It is a response hardwired into us, not as a flaw but as a survival mechanism. Throughout history, anger has been a catalyst for progress. Think about the great leaders and revolutionaries. Martin Luther King Jr. felt anger toward racial injustice, but instead of letting it consume him, he used it to fuel a movement that changed the world. Mahatma Gandhi, though known for peace, was deeply angered by oppression and transformed that anger into relentless determination. Even scientists, artists, and inventors have used frustration and anger as a force to push beyond their limits and create something new. But here is where most people get it wrong. They think they only have two choices: either suppress anger and pretend it does not exist, or let it explode uncontrollably. Neither path is truly effective. Suppressed anger does not go away. It turns into resentment, bitterness, and stress, which can silently erode your well-being. Uncontrolled anger, on the other hand, can destroy relationships, damage your reputation, and lead to decisions you regret. The real secret is not in rejecting anger, but in mastering it. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche once said, "He who cannot control his wrath is weak. He who controls it completely is a fool, but he who masters and directs it is wise." This is the balance most people fail to achieve. To truly benefit from anger, you must learn to recognize it, understand its message, and direct its energy towards something meaningful. Consider your own experiences. Have you ever felt deeply wronged, underestimated, or dismissed? How did you react? Did you allow that anger to hold you back, or did you use it as motivation to prove yourself, to grow, to push forward? The difference between those who let anger consume them and those who use it constructively lies in how they channel that energy. Science supports this idea. Psychological studies have shown that controlled anger can actually enhance performance, sharpen focus, and increase persistence. In one experiment, individuals who experienced mild anger performed better on problem-solving tasks than those who felt neutral. This is because anger, when properly managed, increases determination and reduces fear of failure. But in order to use anger to your advantage, you must first shift your perspective. Instead of seeing it as an enemy, view it as a tool. Instead of suppressing it or letting it explode, learn to listen to what it is telling you. Anger is a signal, a form of inner intelligence. The next time you feel it rising, ask yourself, what is this emotion trying to tell me? Is there an injustice that needs to be addressed? A change that needs to happen? A lesson I need to learn? This is the first step toward transforming anger into power, awareness. Recognizing when and why anger arises allows you to harness it rather than be controlled by it. And this is only the beginning. As we continue, we will explore how to not only understand anger, but actively use it to fuel success, resilience, and personal mastery. Now, take a moment to reflect. Have you been treating anger as an enemy, or have you been using it as a force for change? Because the way you answer that question might determine the direction of your life. Now that we have established that anger is not the enemy but a signal, a force that, when understood, can be transformed into something powerful, it is time to dive deeper. The question is no longer whether anger is good or bad. It is about how you can master it and turn it into fuel for growth, achievement, and resilience. To do this, we need to break down the hidden mechanics of anger. What truly happens when you experience this emotion? Physiologically, anger triggers a chain reaction in the brain and body. The amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for processing emotions, sends an alarm signal, which leads to a surge of adrenaline. Your heart rate increases, your muscles tense, and your focus sharpens. This is the body's way of preparing for action, a mechanism that dates back to our evolutionary past, when anger often meant the difference between survival and defeat. But here is where it gets interesting. While many people assume that anger leads to reckless behavior, research suggests that when properly managed, it can actually enhance strategic thinking. A study published in the journal Emotion found that anger can make people more analytical in decision-making. Rather than reacting impulsively, those who harness their anger effectively tend to evaluate situations more logically and take calculated actions. This means that anger, when controlled, can increase clarity, confidence, and problem-solving skills. This brings us to an important distinction. There is a difference between reactive anger and intentional anger. Reactive anger is impulsive, uncontrolled, and often destructive. It is the kind of anger that leads to regretful words, broken relationships, and missed opportunities. Intentional anger, on the other hand, is anger that has been acknowledged, processed, and redirected toward a goal. It is the fire that fuels determination, the energy that drives change. Think about moments in history when anger was not only justified but necessary. The civil rights movement, women's suffrage, and the fight against oppression in all forms. None of these would have happened without anger. But those who led these movements did not allow anger to consume them. They channeled it, turned it into strategy, resilience, and action. Now, let's apply this to your own life. Have you ever been in a situation where anger pushed you to take action? Perhaps it was a moment when someone doubted your abilities, and instead of giving up, you worked harder than ever to prove them wrong. Or maybe it was frustration with a situation in your life that led you to make a bold decision, to change careers, to leave a toxic relationship, to push yourself beyond what you thought was possible. These moments are proof that anger, when directed wisely, can be transformative. But how do you ensure that you are in control of your anger, rather than letting it control you? The key lies in 3 powerful steps: recognition, reframing, and redirection. The first step, recognition, is about identifying anger when it arises. Most people either suppress it or let it explode, but neither response leads to growth. Instead, when you feel anger, take a moment to acknowledge it without judgment. Ask yourself, what exactly am I feeling? What triggered this emotion? Is there a deeper reason behind my anger? The second step, reframing, is where true power begins. This is about shifting your perspective on anger. Instead of seeing it as a negative force, view it as an indicator of something that needs to change. Maybe your anger is revealing that you have been tolerating something you should not. Maybe it is showing you an injustice that you can no longer ignore. Maybe it is reminding you of your own potential, urging you to take action instead of remaining stagnant. Finally, the third step is redirection. This is where you take the energy of anger and channel it towards something productive. Instead of lashing out, you use that energy to work harder, to push forward, to innovate, to create. This is what separates those who allow anger to destroy them from those who use it as a catalyst for greatness. Take a moment to reflect on your own experiences. Can you think of a time when anger led you to make a positive change? How did it push you forward rather than hold you back? And more importantly, are there areas in your life right now where you could be using anger more effectively? We are just beginning to uncover the true potential of this emotion. As we move forward, we will explore practical techniques that will allow you to harness anger not just for motivation, but for long-term transformation. Because the most powerful revelation about anger is still to come, one that will completely shift the way you approach challenges and adversity. Now that we have explored the nature of anger and how it can be transformed into a tool for growth, it is time to take this understanding even further. Recognizing, reframing, and redirecting anger is only the beginning. The true challenge and the true power lies in learning how to master this energy in a way that fuels long-term success, resilience, and self-mastery. Most people experience anger as an overwhelming force, something that arises suddenly and demands an immediate response. But here is the truth that few understand. The most powerful individuals are not those who suppress their anger, nor those who explode in rage. The truly powerful are those who wield their anger with precision, like a sharpened blade rather than a reckless fire. To do this, you must first learn control. This does not mean denial or repression. It means awareness and intentional action. Anger is energy, and like any form of energy, it can either be scattered and destructive or concentrated and constructive. The way you choose to channel this energy will determine whether it becomes a force of progress or self-sabotage. One of the greatest misconceptions about anger is that it is uncontrollable, that once it ignites, it must either be released immediately or forcefully suppressed. But consider this. If anger were truly uncontrollable, why do people often express it differently depending on their environment? A person might explode in rage at home, but remain composed at work. They might lash out at a stranger, but remain calm when speaking to someone in authority. This proves that at some level, anger is a choice. It is not just a reflex, it is something that can be directed. So how do we develop this level of control? The answer lies in two key principles: delayed response and strategic release. Delayed response is the ability to recognize anger in the moment, but not react immediately. This does not mean ignoring the emotion. Instead, it means creating space between the feeling and the action. The moment anger rises, take a breath, acknowledge it, feel its intensity. But instead of responding impulsively, give yourself a window of time, a few minutes, an hour, a day, to process it fully. In that time, ask yourself, what is this anger trying to tell me? What is the most productive way to use this energy? This small delay can make a massive difference. It allows you to separate reaction from response. It turns an emotional impulse into a conscious decision. And most importantly, it prevents anger from controlling you. Instead, you are the one controlling it. Strategic release is the second principle. This is where you take the energy of anger and channel it toward something meaningful. Some of the greatest achievements in history were driven by individuals who learned to transmute their anger into motivation. Athletes use it to push through physical limits. Entrepreneurs use it to prove doubters wrong. Artists and writers use it to create masterpieces that shake the world. Take Thomas Edison, for example. When his laboratory burned down, destroying years of work, he did not allow frustration to break him. Instead, he famously said, "Thank goodness all our mistakes were burned up. Now we can start again fresh." This mindset is not natural. It is trained. It is the ability to take what could have been an overwhelming defeat and transform it into fuel for progress. The same principle applies to personal challenges. Instead of letting anger drive destructive actions, ask yourself, how can I use this energy productively? Can you take the frustration from a failed relationship and use it to build a stronger sense of self-worth? Can you take the anger from a workplace injustice and turn it into motivation to elevate your career? Can you transform the disappointment of rejection into relentless determination? Here is something to consider. Some of the most successful people in the world were once underestimated, dismissed, or even ridiculed. But instead of allowing that anger to consume them, they used it as the driving force to rise above. They did not let their emotions control them. They controlled their emotions. And that made all the difference. Now think about your own life. Is there an area where you have been letting anger get the best of you instead of using it to your advantage? Are there situations where you have reacted impulsively rather than strategically? What would change if, from this moment forward, you made the decision to master this energy rather than be a slave to it? The greatest shift happens when you stop seeing anger as something that happens to you and start seeing it as something you can work with. Because the final and most powerful insight about anger is still ahead. An understanding that, once realized, will change the way you experience not only anger, but life itself. Now we arrive at the final and most powerful realization about anger, one that, if fully understood, has the potential to reshape the way you approach life itself. Up until now, we have explored anger as a force that can be recognized, controlled, and directed toward growth. But there is one final layer, one deeper truth that separates those who merely manage their anger from those who master it completely. The true power of anger does not come just from controlling or redirecting it. The highest level of mastery comes when you transform anger into something even greater: clarity, wisdom, and purpose. Think about it. Why does anger exist in the first place? It is not just a reaction. It is a signal, a message. It is telling you that something in your life demands attention. But here is what most people miss. Anger is not the end of the process. It is the beginning. Many people stay trapped in anger, believing that feeling it intensely is enough. They let it consume their thoughts, dominate their actions, and shape their identity. But anger alone does not create lasting change. Action based on deeper understanding does. The goal is not just to use anger, but to move beyond it, to turn its energy into something higher. This is where wisdom comes in. Anger is a raw force, but wisdom is refined. Wisdom allows you to take the fire of anger and turn it into light, into insight, perspective, and purpose. Let us look at history again. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in prison, unjustly accused, stripped of freedom, and treated as less than human. If anyone had the right to be consumed by anger, it was him. But when he finally emerged, he did not let that anger define him. He transformed it. Instead of seeking revenge, he sought unity. Instead of allowing resentment to rule him, he turned his pain into a vision for a better world. This is not weakness. It is the highest form of strength. So, how do we take this lesson and apply it to our own lives? It starts with one question. What lies beyond my anger? Think about a situation in your life that has made you deeply angry. Maybe it is a betrayal, an injustice, a failure, or a personal regret. Now, instead of focusing on the emotion itself, ask, what is this anger trying to teach me? Does it mean you need to set stronger boundaries? Does it reveal an area in your life where you have been settling for less than you deserve? Does it show you a part of yourself that needs healing, growth, or transformation? When you ask this question, something shifts. Anger is no longer just an emotion. It becomes a teacher. It is no longer something that happens to you, but something that guides you toward clarity. The greatest breakthroughs in life often come after moments of great frustration. The job you lost might push you toward the career you were meant to have. The relationship that ended might lead you to self-discovery and deeper fulfillment. The rejection, the failure, the setback, these moments fueled by anger can become the foundation for something far greater. But only if you are willing to look beyond the emotion itself and see the lesson it carries. And here is the most powerful insight of all. When you truly master anger, you no longer need it to drive you. It becomes a stepping stone rather than a crutch. You do not wait for frustration to motivate you. You move with purpose, clarity, and direction because you have trained yourself to act from wisdom rather than just emotion. This is the final level of mastery. Not just using anger, not just controlling it, but transcending it. Now take a moment to reflect. How has anger played a role in your life up until now? Have you been letting it control you, or have you been using it to push yourself forward? And more importantly, are you ready to move beyond it, to turn its fire into light, its energy into wisdom? Because the greatest transformation happens not when you hold on to anger, but when you rise above it. This is where real power begins, and it starts with you. Thanks for looking.